Tom Fitton on the line, president of Judicial Watch. Good morning to you, Mr. Fitton.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm very well, Tom. How are you?
Good.
Wonderful. So we are talking Sally Yates. We are getting into, we're trying to do I'm trying to do a balancing act of getting into exactly. We spent the first hour getting into exactly what she said yesterday, especially with regards this travel ban, these 10 days in office, which were just so incredibly curious and damaging for the president and for, I think, the way this country operates, quite frankly. She seems to think that she is either the president or is the Supreme Court or somebody on the Supreme Court. Tell us a little bit about what Judicial Watch did yesterday with regards Sally Yates' emails during her time as acting Attorney General.
Well, yeah, we actually had filed the lawsuit on Friday, but it was a lawsuit under the Freedom of Information Act, which allows you to get access to government records. And, we want her records from her tenure, as you point out, her brief tenure as acting Attorney General, her email records. Simple request, but of course we haven't gotten anything. So that's why we're now in federal court trying to get some more answers that might shed some light on some of the key issues that she was involved in, namely the Flynn scandal, which wasn't a scandal about what Flynn did, but what the intelligence agencies and President Trump's opposition within the bureaucracies did. And then secondly, her lawless refusal to defend the executive order that President Trump issued related to immigration, a lawlessness which resulted correctly in her firing by Trump.
What do you why do you think that they don't come back to you with the emails just straight up? Because let's face it, under the Freedom of Information Act, you should get these things. If you request them, you should get them. I mean, you might get some redacted ones or whatever it is, but they should give you these things. What's the logic behind? Is it just a delay tactic?
I tend to think the default position of the bureaucracy is secrecy, and that tends to be the case no matter who's in office. And you need proactive appointees and a proactive administration to force transparency on the agencies. Certainly, I don't know what the interest is in the Trump administration in protecting Sally Yates' emails, which makes me think there really is no interest. We're just facing a Justice Department that's used to telling us no.
Let's get a little bit into this, into the testimony that we heard yesterday, specifically with regards to travel ban and what she said. We played a couple of the clips this morning about it, where she says, it wasn't a purely policy-driven, stand that she took, and thereby giving away that it was in part a partisan decision that she took. She conflated what Senator Ted Cruz said about the U.S. Code with the Immigration and Nationality Act, and yet all of the news outlets out there are basically saying, Ted Cruz got whacked around the face with a wet fish by Sally Yates yesterday, and it was amazing, and she's now the heavyweight champion of the world. What's your view on how she danced around those issues yesterday? Because honestly, I'm not a lawyer. I'm not even, I'm not even a constitutional expert in the slightest with regards to the United States law. But even I can see that what she was saying and the way she was dancing around these questions just proved that she was totally and utterly in the wrong.
Well, I'm not a lawyer, though I play one on TV. I think you're right. Your instinct is right. As Attorney General, she had an obligation to try to make the best case she could for this executive order, and she refused to do that. In fact, not only that, she sought to undermine it by ordering her Justice Department not to defend that. When, of course, there's a plausible defense. We weren't asking her to jump off a bridge. We were asking her to uphold the rule of law here, or the president's lawful authority to regulate foreign nationals who come into the country. And
whose authority is
it? One more time.
Whose authority is that? I mean, who sets immigration policy for the United States?
Well, ultimately Congress does, and it's enforced by the President of the United States. So this is, as you pointed out, the statutory fight that it's an issue here, and the left doesn't like that the Congress has given the President broad authority to protect the nation from foreign nationals, which President Trump is seemingly exercising. And we kind of saw the writing on the wall where these folks are coming from yesterday in one of the court fights in the Fourth Circuit, the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals. where one of the judges implied, maybe if it was, or one of the lawyers for the ACLU who was challenging the opinion, the EO in its current form suggested if Hillary Clinton did it, would have been okay. So, Sally Yates, if she didn't want to defend the opinion, she should have stepped aside. We weren't asking her to do anything against her conscience. If she had a conscientious objection here that was well-founded and was serious, then she should have stepped aside.
Should have just resigned.
And let someone else do the job.
Absolutely.
That's exactly right. But don't undermine your client. That's not ethical. That's not right.
We are talking to Tom Fitton, the president of Judicial Watch. Tom, I just want to pivot quickly to this question that leads Breitbart.com right now. Where's the beef? On the issue of Trump and Russia, there has been no evidence. There is still no evidence of collusion, yet we still repeatedly hear this mantra, Russians hacked the election, Russians leaked the election, Russians did all sorts of grotesque and unspeakable things to the election. We're told this as a matter of fact, but we're still not being shown any evidence. Was there anything that you saw yesterday that went any further on this issue? Was there anything that gave us any more pause for thought here?
No, I don't think the needle moved anywhere from where the real scandal is. No collusion between the Russians and the Trump people. And the remaining legal issue of any serious note is the nature of the surveillance, whether it was licit or illicit, the unmasking, whether it was licit or illicit, and the leaking, which we know was illicit. That's where the criminal investigation ought to be focused on. That's where the Senate investigation and the House investigations ought to be focused on. I don't know how many times we need to have someone like James Clapper testify there's no evidence of collusion before we stop asking the question.
Just fascinated that, she can sit there, Sally Yates, before the Senate Judiciary Committee and say things like, yes, Flynn was vulnerable to blackmail and therefore presented a national security risk. We hear all sorts of things about all sorts of politicians, and Barack Obama, President Obama, included in that. And since he left the Oval Office, we've heard a lot about his private life at college and how he conducted himself. And I'm not making a value judgment as to whether or not those things are true, but there are things out there. What do you think is the smoking gun then? What's the difference between why somebody like Barack Obama was not, vulnerable to blackmail, given what foreign intelligence agencies would have no doubt dug up on him over the last 10, 15 years, and someone like Mike Flynn, just because he was, in general comms with people?
Well, more specific, I think even a better analogy is Hillary Clinton.
Absolutely.
Who had the FBI director said that they were working on the assumption her material was hacked. Mm-hmm. That's one of the reasons we don't put that type of material out on the internet equivalent of a park bench. So people like that, our material is protected, and people who lose that material won't be suspect and barraged, put at the wrong end of a blackmail operation. So, those are the real issues there. You had Hillary Clinton receiving tens of millions of dollars from her foreign nationals and foreign governments through her husband while Secretary of State. Mm-hmm. Those seems to me legal issues that are still pending out there. General Flynn and whether he was compromised by the Russians doesn't answer the question what he told the Russians. If you believe the New York Times and people who have looked at the documents, it's not clear he did anything wrong or that he even misled the vice president. So let's not jump to the conclusions that Sally Yates, a partisan advocate on behalf of Barack Obama, are making.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree with you more. That's Tom Fitton, the president of Judicial Watch. Thank you so much, Tom, for joining us here on Breitbart News Daily.